You've been doing social media work for around a decade. What is social listening?
A lot of people are like, Jazmin, I have all this data, engagement shares. I don't know what to do with it. And when I go in and I talk to people and I educate them, they're like, whoa.
It's the reading between the lines, but it's also the drawing of the map, presenting all that, the story of the data.
I like data. My background is in strategy, and social listening seems to be a blend of the two where I'm getting to tell a story with the numbers.
Some call her the socialista, correct?
Yes.
Welcome back to the Creator Spotlight Podcast. Today, we're speaking with Jazmine Griffith. She's been working in social media for around a decade, commands a combined TikTok and Instagram following of 340,000, add another 20,000 LinkedIn followers on top of that, and is the founder of a social listening agency called Que Lo Que, where she's worked with clients like Sony, Fenty, and Amazon. Jazmine, thank you for coming on.
Hello. I have 340K of combined. I was like, oh, that's a nice little number.
You're like, where did they come from?
I was like, that's nice. But hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Okay, we were just talking a bit about this before we started recording, but social listening, I think, is not a term that's ever come up on the 50-some, however many episodes of this show we've done. What is social listening?
Oh, that is such a good question. Basically, social listening is exactly what it sounds like. It's listening to social media. But if we want to dive a little bit deeper into that, it's really like diving into the digital landscape, looking at your comments, reading into private communities, scrolling on your feed, and really diving into what are people saying about you, about your brand, about the industry, and then taking what you're hearing and kind of putting it into a story to be able to give that to a brand or an individual and saying, hey, we've been seeing X, Y, and Z of conversation happening online, and we think you have opportunity to do X. Why social listening works is because a lot of the time people use it for crisis. They use it to kind of lurk and to sneak into other like competitors. Also, they use it if they want to develop a new product and they say, hey, what is something that people are really struggling with? What is a product that we can kind of come out with to solve a problem that they're having? So social listening is a lot. You can do a lot with it, but ultimately is what it means. It's listening, to the landscape and figuring out how to use what people are saying to your benefit.
How did you get into like this as a specific subset of social media work? Because you've been doing social media work for professionally for around a decade. Just looking at your LinkedIn, some of the earlier roles are more like social strategist, that kind of thing. How did you end up niching down into this specifically?
That's a good question. I don't even know. I think social listening right now is like, it's a hot buzzword. Like you'll hear social listening and social intelligence, but I think people started really understanding and start wanting, social listening as a role around 2020, a little bit after that, maybe 2021, right when TikTok kind of came out. Because this is when you started seeing a lot of like these weird communities, book talk, mom talk, pickle talk, right? And so people really wanted to understand like
sourdough talk.
What's going on? Yeah. Like, there was so many things going on. And so some of the roles that I had, I was kind of already doing like social analytics. And then it was kind of like, hey, Jazmin, I ended up getting a contract with like Google Pay, and the title was social listening, a social listening analyst. And they were like, hey, we really just want to understand like what the conversation around Google Pay is online. But if you think about it, social listening is also kind of blended in with social analytics. So I think I kind of drilled down a little bit to say, okay, I like data. My background is in strategy, and social listening seems to be a blend of the two where I'm getting to tell a story with the numbers. So that's kind of how I started to continue to find roles after that. But initially started around with kind of like the Sony and Google Pay, and they really wanted to understand like the finance landscape. They wanted to read into more so of like, what's Cash App doing? What's PayPal doing? And how can we do something similar? And so, that's how I kind of got into it. And then I kind of built into it over time. It started to be into like trend spotting and culture mapping and listening to creators. It's really like grown into something larger than what it was when I first started.
Yeah. So just to kind of now put a nail on where I'm understanding, my understanding of social listening as you're laying it out. It's the reading between the lines, but it's also the drawing of the map and then like basically presenting all that, the story of the data. What are the data points that are actually important to you when you're like building these narratives and trying to go out and draw the map? Like what metrics, what are you measuring?
Yeah, so it's changed a lot over time. If I was to say now what metrics matter, especially when it comes to social listening, I would start with like sentiment. I really want to understand what are people saying about me in a very positive way. Neutral is usually like blogs, media, influencers, and then also negative. But the really cool thing about like negative sentiment and what I love about it is a lot of people think negative is just bad, and it's really not. Usually within negative, there's a problem that people are having.
Mm.
Hey, I really hate that your bottles are plastic, or why is it green, or why do I see all this sugary stuff at the bottom of my soda? So it's like, let me take this negative and try to figure out what can I solve with it. Also
It's
share
finding
voice.
problems that lead to solutions in that way.
100%.
Mhm.
And people, brands are still kind of leaning into what they can do with negative sentiment, but it's one of the things that I love to measure. Also share a voice. And I love this from like a competitor standpoint. We did a lot of it at Pepsi. It's really trying to understand who is killing it in the
Mm.
share voice space. Like if a brand is getting so many mentions over month, let's dive into it. Why? Like, why is Dr. Pepper getting so many mentions? What are they doing? Are they doing new partner collabs? Are they working with new creators? Did they just come out with a new soda flavor? Like, those are some of the metrics that I love to dive in deep into. And then just overall, like engagement per post and like post shares are
Mm.
probably the biggest thing that I love to kind of measure at the moment with social listening. Post shares specifically because if somebody is sharing your content, that means they have an emotional tie to it. Like,
Mhm.
I like it, cool. I'm going to comment, great. But if I'm sharing it with you, this is something that I need you to see because ultimately that person's going to share it with somebody else and et cetera, et cetera. So it's
Yeah.
that extra step of an engagement that people don't really realize that has an emotional tie in than any other metric. But it's some of the stuff that I like to measure in a
Sharing
long-winded
too,
answer.
like you weren't always able to measure shares. Like I think
No.
on Instagram, even like now,
Yep.
if you're scrolling reels, you can see that even just as a
100%.
user. But that's only like a couple of years ago that they
Yep.
introduced that, right?
Yeah.
So
100%.
this gets into two, like, you obviously, I'm sure you know the term dark social, right? Like, which is all the stuff where like you don't see it, where people,
Yeah.
it's what people are sharing in Slack, etc. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm still just defining social listening here, but like
Yeah.
that is kind of one of the superpowers of this as a
Yep.
strategy is attempting to map out the dark social.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing about social listening and what a lot of social listening tools can't do, and why you physically kind of need a human to do it because
Hmm.
tools don't have the APIs to read into your broadcast channels or your Slack channels or even like some of the like subreddits and the Discord and Twitch servers. You physically need someone that's a part of those communities. Same thing for Facebook
Hmm.
groups because nowadays people are sharing selfishly to themselves or very privately. People don't want to share out in the open anymore. People don't want their business out there, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, it's really taking the time, and it it has its pros and cons because you have to be a part of everything. Even with Substack, it's like you have to be a part of everything in order to read what's going on. But I feel like that's what makes me unique in a way because ultimately I'm always on, unfortunately. But I get to be in a part of these communities and say, hey, I was just in this Slack group for marketers, and this is some of the things that I'm seeing. Or hey, I have this broadcast channel that's all about wellness. Did you know that the girls are saying X, Y, and Z? So that's a really cool thing about social listening that a lot of other tools can't do, and why you need a
Yeah.
physical person to do that because they can kind of like decode and bring out some insights in these private communities in the dark web or the dark social, like you were saying.
Yeah. What are you keep mentioning tools? What are like actually some of the specific tools? Like one, there's kind of the hard tools, maybe in the soft tools. Soft tools is like you knowing what communities people are
Yeah.
active in and you finding your way into those communities and participating in them,
Yeah.
etc. What are like also the hard tools though? Like the actual, like, I don't know, whether it's software or whatever, like how do you do social
Yeah.
listening is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
With what tools do you do it?
Let's talk tools because it's interesting. I was filming a brand partnership this morning and I was like, it was a social listening tool, but it was like an
Mhm.
AI video social listening. And this is like new. And I was like, whoa, I'm like, this is like, whew, this is out of my league here. Like, this is new for me. Like, this is so
Like
cool.
it's like scanning video for specific things that are said.
Correct. So, for example, for a long time, and still kind of, TikTok's API doesn't allow basically any tools to be able to
Mhm.
go in and listen. Like when you think of your standard social listening tools, your Brand Watch, your sprinklers, your Talk Water and
Mhm.
Meltwater, a lot of the time you're building out queries. A query is I'm just putting keywords together on things that I want to search for. And most social listening tools only allow you to listen to news, media, Reddit, and Twitter. Anything on Instagram, if it's not public, you cannot listen to. And then same thing for TikTok. Well, I've been discovering new tools like an archive or a pulsar or a plot where it's video social listening, where now I can type in, like today I played around with Graza. I was like, I want to see, what Graza has going on. Like, how are people using Graza? And I typed in Graza and it pulled up all the videos of people using Graza. They weren't even saying it. They didn't
But just
tag
because
it,
it's such a recognizable, scannable object.
Correct. It recognized the bottle, the green, and it was just so cool and so fascinating. So that's why I say let's talk tools, because back then they didn't really have the AI to be able to do as much of the cool things that you can do now. So it just depends on how granular you want to get in and the type of industry that you work in and the clients that you work in. But social listening is usually, let's build a query and let me listen to the conversation, but let's take it a step further. And now I want to listen to comments, or now I want to see what the video, what's populating through video. So yeah.
Okay, something you were talking about a second before we got into this too is how you were saying, like, you're in this community, you're in that community, you're in this, and like it is a little overwhelming. This is something that I personally also like struggle with. Is I spend a lot of time reading newsletters or watching YouTube videos or looking at Instagram, whatever, and like some of that is like legitimately research for my work, and then some of it, you quickly slide into the mindless scrolling, or like, why am I even reading this thing? Like, I do not care. This is not serving me. But for you, I'm getting the impression that you have to be and are much more plugged into a lot of things. How do you actually build systems for yourself, or like habits, so you're not just like consuming all the slop at once and you're able to separate what's worth paying attention to versus the mindless filler?
That's a good question that I do not have an answer to. I'm gonna be honest with you. I will have times where I'm like mindlessly scrolling, which is why I love the save feature, because a lot of the time I'm just scrolling like on LinkedIn, and I will like say, oh, let me stop and save this because I can create a piece of content around this, or I think somebody needs to know this. But I have not come up with a system just yet, to be honest with you. I usually scroll. If I see something that I know I want to talk about, or it's worth noting, or someone needs to know, I just pull up my notes tab on either my phone or my laptop, and I type it in, I add the link in, and I keep going back. Or I just go to my saves folder. I usually like every Sunday night, I'm going through my save folders on TikTok and LinkedIn specifically. And I'm like, okay, I saved some stuff during the week. What are we going to do with this? That's my system at the moment. It's
but that's a great system, because I'm doing that too. Like I'm I'm more on LinkedIn and Twitter. Maybe I'm like saving stuff constantly, but you saying like that you go back in and look at it every Sunday, I'm like realizing now I don't remember the last time I went to my saved on any of the platforms where I am saving stuff constantly.
Same. That's a feature that if any platforms are listening, we need to be able to filter through the saves. TikTok doesn't have it, Instagram does not have it, and LinkedIn doesn't have it. We need a way to be able to filter through the saves, because that would really be a lifesaver.
Yeah. Well, that too is like, I think a lot about taste, and I have another podcast, Tasteland, where we talk about like the idea of taste and the creation of it sometimes. And I think this is the thing. There's such an oversupply of information, and the ability to be decisive about what you choose not to consume is like a superpower. I think more and more when it's so easy to just be kind of caught up in the tsunami of content.
100%. Yeah. I agree with that. I watched this girl's post the other day, and she was talking about how you basically have to curate your For You page for content that you want to see. And I was like, that's so true, because I used to just scroll and scroll and scroll, and I didn't realize, I'm like, none of this stuff really works for what I want. So now I'm very mindful on what I like. I'm very mindful on the things that I click and say I'm not interested, because I'm truly curating my feed to be around brand strategists. Sometimes like sourdough bakers are in there, but like I really try to curate my feed to be things that I really want to consume, and not things that I shouldn't be consuming, or it's going to waste my time, or I know I'm going to go down like a rabbit hole with. So
I personally too, only like 6 months ago, so I started using the not interested feature a lot on my Instagram feed, where I do spend a lot of time. And I actually would love to know, like, from Meta, the feature adoption percentage on that, because I'm sure it's quite low, and people just kind of like go with the flow and get caught in these like cul-de-sacs of content.
It's an extra step. People don't like to do the extra step, but like I'm starting to realize like it helps. So when I'm scrolling, it doesn't feel like it's just a whole bunch of fluff on my feed. Like, it's actually valuable information.
Tell me about Kiloke, your agency. So you've been doing social media work for now, I think, about a decade. Looking on your LinkedIn, like you're very thorough. You've got all your stuff listed, the like short-term engagements, the long-term engagements. It's like 25 things. But Kiloke is a little more recent in your career. So tell me how this comes
Yeah.
about, why you started it, why you pick that name specifically, has its own
Yeah.
meaning.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's talk it. Okay. Okay. So I had kind of like a freelance biz long ago. It was called La Marca Consulting, which means the brand in Spanish.
Hmm.
But I just used it as for my consulting kind of company. It wasn't really like anything serious. And then a year and a half ago, I really started diving deep into like LinkedIn and really diving into my niche of social listening. And I'm like, wait, oh, okay. I'm the social listening girly. And I'm like, wait, this is so new. It's so fresh. And
Some
people
call
still
her the
want to talk about it.
socialista, correct?
Yes, yes. So I was like, let's try it. I'm talking to my partner and he was like, you need to do something with this. And so we were noodling with names. And so I'm half Spanish. I'm half black. Que lo que comes from more so the Dominican heritage, which I'm not, but I love the sound of it. I love the terminology of it being like, what's up? Because really my personality is so big, it's so vibrant. And so that's where the name came from. And so Que lo que is really just kind of like my passion project, my consulting side gig. It's also an agency, but I really want to help people find out what people are saying about their brand online. I really want to work with brands to tell the story behind their numbers because a lot of people are like, Jazmin, I have all this data, great engagement shares, cool. I don't know what to do with it. Like, what's the story? Like, and when I go in and I talk to people and I educate them on like, this is the story, this is a new product, this is the collaboration they can do. They're like, whoa, see, I didn't know that social listening does all that. So that's exactly what Que Lo Que is I really want to help people decode culture. I really want to help them understand the numbers. And I don't want them to be scared by data. I really want them to know, like, you're putting so much great content out there. Let's really dissect it so we can continue to put out great content so you can have your consumers and fans and build that, community cult following. So that's where kind of like Que Lo Que came from. It's still a work in progress. I'm still figuring it out day by day, but I've gotten a lot of great feedback from it. So
Hmm.
thanks to LinkedIn and everybody else. So yeah, that's
Well,
kind
okay.
of the
So on
spiel.
LinkedIn too, specifically in your description for the agency in your experience section, you say we founded Que Lo Que because we saw a gap in the market, a gap for a crew that doesn't just want to be
Hmm.
your strategic partner. We want to be your ride or die, your truth tellers, your partners in crime. We're here to help brands cut through the noise, create epic
Yep.
stuff, and ride the wave of trends like the cool kids we are. So I think I'm going back to
Ooh.
this idea of like decisiveness and taste. Like you really
Yeah.
do portray a point of view with that, and like picking specifically Que Lo Que, which is this like very
Yeah.
culturally specific name,
Yeah.
that is itself a way of cutting through the noise, I think, pretty
Yeah.
effectively.
100%. Being black and brown, a lot of brands are trying to tap into a lot of the culture, and a lot of the time they don't have anyone to decode it. And so I want to
Yeah,
be one of those. I
it's
have
you
the agency
saying
with my
I'm
partner.
here.
Yes, I'm here. Like, I've worked in the Fortune 500 companies and I understand the nuances. I understand the conversations. And so I just want to be that person in the room that kind of clears that table and helps you have a way in into the communities that I'm a part of and everyone else is kind of enjoying as well.
Hmm. Okay, so going back a few minutes ago, I mentioned the 25 different experiences listed on your LinkedIn. You've
Yeah.
clearly worked with a lot of clients and in a lot of industries. I was
Yeah.
wondering if there is a specific industry doing this work that you found most easy to work in, and maybe another
Hmm.
one most difficult to do social listening work in.
Food and beverage has always been fun and easy to work in. There's just so much you can do. So many audiences, Gen Z. I spent the
So
last
many
two
people
years in a
talking about it. I mean,
so
Graza,
many
for example,
people.
people love to talk about it.
Yes, people love to eat. People love to drink. And right now, like Gen Z coded branding is in, which is really big with the food and beverage industries. And so I spent the last 2 years and a half working at PepsiCo under Mountain Dew, which is like a huge company. It's so fun. They just Baja Blast, cult community, Super Bowl. They do a lot of fun things. And so I would say that's my favorite industry to work in. As far as most difficult, finance was probably the most difficult one, like with my time at Google Pay. And you could do a lot of fun stuff like Cash App is doing, but with money, you have to be careful. Like people nowadays, it's kind of
There's a
like,
lot of legality.
yeah, it's kind of like, how do you make people feel confident in their money and what's going on, with inflation and in politics and tariffs. So it's a tough, tough industry to be in. But if you do it the right way, I think there's a lot of way in for, to be able to tap into those younger communities.
Hmm. You said a second ago something about Gen Z coded branding, and I'm curious if there's about the generational aspect to your work. Like if that's something clients come to you for, where they're like, help us segment our audience. What is Gen Z saying versus what are millennials saying, and
Yeah.
how you actually accomplish that if people are asking for that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's safe to say every brand wants to talk to Gen Z, and every brand is trying to figure out how do we talk to Gen Z. And so a lot of the audience work I've done for a lot of these different brands has been that. Like, I want to understand Gen Z. Who are they? They're lonely, they broke, they love to travel, they're still living at home with their parents, they don't want to go to college, they don't want to work, they wanted their free spirit.
They're broke, and yet the brands still want to know how you sell to them.
100%. But Gen Z, they spend money. I just saw that they buy a $25 box of croissant cereal. They go to Erewhon and spend $40.
Coachella on a layaway plan.
Yes, 100%. They will be at every single festival. I don't know how they get there and who they're staying with or whatever, but they will be there. So Gen Z is, what I love about them is they live life to the fullest. Like, there's no tomorrow, and there's always a way. They're trying to always figure out a way. And so that's one of the main audiences that every single brand wants to tap into, because though they don't have the money, they still have a large spending power. I don't know how, but they always figure out a way. They're hustlers. They have trades. They're trying to figure out a way in always. So that's a lot of the work that I do, is those audiences specifically. Not a lot of millennials. Every now and then some boomers, because they are unique in their own way. They've been, you see them a lot in like skincare and wellness and fashion. But mostly everything is around Gen Z.
Hey, if you're enjoying this conversation, consider subscribing to the podcast. We release a new episode every Tuesday. All right, back to the show. I want to move from talking about social listening and brands to social listening and creators, and maybe then get into your own life as a creator. But I think, like, when I think of creators practicing social listening, it's almost a thing too, where it's like you're looking for what is, let's say you're making Instagram reels or TikToks, and so it's the short form video, and you're looking for what's working, and then you're looking for, like, here's the thing that I know is currently, like, the wave has not yet crested, like, it's still going up, and I can put my spin on this, and I can identify, like, the traits of, like, this video is working because of this precise timing, this song, like this lighting, whatever it is, all the many details that you have to be able to break down to be successful. I guess I'm asking you, how is social listening something that creators can apply to further their own content, not for, like, large brands to apply, but for creators specifically?
I think the comment section is a gold mine, especially for creators, because a lot of the time, like, for example, my content started off because I went through a really, really bad breakup. I posted about it. I shared my experience. I was crying on TikTok. Beautiful stuff.
People love that.
People love a sad girl, and so I wish, I was guiding women through the journey of, like, this is my breakup and this is what life looks like after my breakup. Well, many years later, I have a healthy relationship. I'm in a new relationship.
You can't make content like that anymore.
I cannot. So I've shifted my content from being the motivational, inspirational, going through a breakup, to, I really want to share my day-to-day life. Like, I am a creator. I'm running a business. I have a corporate 9-to-5 job. And so I pivoted my content a lot. And so some of it was not working. People were not they were not getting jiggy with it. They were like, no, Jazmine, we want the old stuff. But then I started But then I started looking at my comment section. I started doing polls. I started being more interactive in my broadcast channel. And I was like, okay, there is an intersection here. And so now I talk about, what is it like being a woman in her 30s? You're figuring out era. Yeah. What is it like to work in this industry? How can I be an entrepreneur? And I'm like, wait, this content is working. And so what I want to say is, for a lot of creators, if you take the time to actually talk to your community, and when they talk to you back and you listen and you take their feedback, that's how you know what content is working and when it's not working. And it's also just, actually talking back to them in your comments, looking at your broadcast channels. If you're doing a poll on your story, like, hey, sis, what kind of content do you want to see more of? Or what should I do for my YouTube blog this week? It's actually, like, using that. A lot of people don't realize, like, something as simple as that is social listening.
Mm-hmm. And the most engaged people are the ones who are going to reply, and they're the ones who are most invested in your content.
100%.
Is TikTok then, like, where you really began creating content as a creator in earnest?
It's interesting because I spend majority of my time on Instagram and LinkedIn. But I've been trying to repurpose some of that content on TikTok, and it's actually been working. But where I spend most of my time is Instagram and LinkedIn, which I can't even believe. I scroll LinkedIn as the first platform versus Instagram and TikTok. It's so weird. That would have never happened to me a year ago. But now, yes, I'm on it every day, all day. I love it.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. I mean, because I also have that sickness. But you say it wouldn't have happened to you a year ago. What changed?
No. I was scrolling on LinkedIn and some of my Jade, I love Jade Powell. I know her
Hmm.
from Atlanta, and I used to love watching her content on LinkedIn. And I was like, let me try. Just let me try. And so I started posting more professional stuff, but in a really fun, cheeky, quirky way, leaning into social listening, leaning into my day to day life. And I posted one video that was like, here's a day in the life as a social listening analyst at PepsiCo, full-time content creator. And I was like, whoa, this works. People loved it. I got like 15 million impressions. And this is when like
Wow.
the reach was good on LinkedIn. Now
Mm.
it's not like
Well,
that.
because
But I
now
was like,
everyone also is figuring out, also, let me try this.
yes, everyone's like in their try it out
Mhm.
era. But I was like, okay, people like this. I just gave, and I was like, let me just roll with this. And so that's how I started being more active on LinkedIn. And two, I love that when I was scrolling on LinkedIn, I was learning something. I was like, oh, I didn't know this, or let me connect with this person. I had more accessibility to people that I wouldn't be able to kind of connect with, like on TikTok, with on Instagram as well. So that's what made me kind of make the pivot a little bit. And then I was like, let me try this content on Instagram, but let me just change it up a little bit for the verbiage to be more platform specific.
Mm.
And so that's what I'm doing right now. And it's actually working in my favor.
Like, what kind of specific things are you shifting?
It's more so like carousels, or like the verbiage might be a little bit more cheekier. It's like
Yeah.
a diary entry, more conversational versus LinkedIn. It still has that professional touch to it that on Instagram it doesn't have. The advice that I give is a lot more like I'm talking to my homegirl versus the advice that I might give to on
Yes.
LinkedIn is more like I'm talking to my coworker. So
Yeah.
I try to just the small little nuances, even the images that I might use, the text, the nuances kind of work and people pick up on it.
Yeah. Which I think, honestly, that is something that people often forget is like, you don't have
Yeah.
to change a lot, but you do have to change a little bit. And I've tested some of
Yeah.
these like AI tools that like will, take your full length newsletter or blog post or whatever
Hmm.
and like chop it up into Twitter posts and LinkedIn posts and like Instagram ideas or whatever. And it just didn't work to me because the tools just were, they didn't really understand what that nuance was.
Same. It's you still need the human touch. And two, AI doesn't know your community. They might know like your tone a little bit, but like
Yeah.
they don't know your community. They don't know the conversations that you're having. So I use AI a little bit, maybe to write captions here and there, but for
Mhm.
the most part, I do it all myself.
Yeah. This is a question I love to ask everybody who comes on the show. See if I get a little different answer. How do you define creator? And specifically in the sense of like content
Mm.
creator, not just like creative, but how do you define the term creator?
Um, I would define a creator as honestly somebody that just loves to create content, but they're not doing it for views or likes. It's just
Mhm.
things that they enjoy, passions, hobbies, and interests. Some of the like my favorite creators that I like to watch their content, they don't have a lot of views, but you can tell that they're passionate about what they're talking about, be it food, be it cooking, being a mom, be it grilling, be it making sourdough. I've been on sourdough talk, so sorry. But they're not doing you, they're creating the same content and you can tell that they're just very passionate about
Mhm.
it. So I think that's what I would define as a creator. I need to think that one to myself because I'm
Okay, well,
like,
I'll tell you a
it's
couple of my
interesting.
definitions because I really like that because that's like a really optimistic view, and I think that's really good. Two definitions I have. One is the more general one, which is somewhat aligned with what you were saying, which is just somebody who is contributing to the corpus of the internet, right? Like
Yeah.
the internet is just a series of content blocks that we interact with on a day to day. So it's just somebody who is like contributing to that. That's
Yeah.
like a very high level definition. The other one that I am more in on is somebody who is creating digital media for distribution on the internet
Mm,
for an audience beyond their immediate friends and family. So they're
I
actively
like
trying to
that.
reach other people and they're thinking about that. And then third, in some way, they're monetizing it, whether that's
Yeah.
just basic ad revenue share or like it's brand deals or it's like a top of funnel thing
Yeah.
for something else. But it's like I'm always tuning this, but I like this one because it encapsulates kind of the three jobs of the creator, so to speak, which are creation, growth, and
Hmm.
monetization.
That's good. No, that's good. The creator and influencer, it's just like blurred lines because now influencer has a
We have to
cringy
talk about
name.
this too. The difference between creator and influencer. Let me know. What do you think it is?
Ah, nowadays when I look at it, even when I tell people I'm an influencer, I have like a cringe. I'm like, ugh, influencer, right?
Yeah.
I feel like what defines an influencer? What makes you say that you have to have a certain amount of followers in order to be an influencer? If I'm influencing one person to buy something, or if I'm influencing you to start a business, then that makes me an influencer, but I'm also creating content. So for me, it has some blurred lines in between. I don't have a definition between the two
I
just
think,
yet
okay,
because I
I
consider
think you're going to
myself a
like mine.
creator.
I think you're going to like
Okay.
mine. So I think that influencer used to be maybe a thing like 10 years
Yeah.
ago, not more recently too, but back before we had these more defined terms, back before the creator economy as an industry was a little more matured, there was such a thing as an influencer, which was who could just be like somebody with 1 million Instagram followers and they just post still images of them in Hawaii and then in Thailand and then et cetera, that kind of thing. Like that is kind of the stereotype of an influencer. But I think today the level of competition on any of these given platforms is so high that your quality bar has to also be so high, and you have to be really actively thinking about these things. It's so competitive. So my point is then influencing is no longer like a type of person, but it is something you can have and something you can do. It's more like one of the revenue streams that would be available to a creator. Maybe you're selling access to your audience and you're selling the trust your audience has in you to a brand for a set sum, or even it's like, it's you have your own brand and you're trying to kind of like turn that content capital into financial capital, or it's like, you're some politician is like makes a deal with you and you're just like, or doesn't even make a deal with you, but you support them. And so you are like attempting to like lend the power of your audience to that person. But I think the influencer as like somebody who that's all they do as part of their like creator work, I think that has diminished because it's so competitive that you have to have these multiple revenue streams, and influencing only becomes one of them.
Yeah, it's a competitive, it's saturated. I think they glamorized it a little bit too much, where it's like the conversation on TikTok right now where girls are, people are dropping out of college to be, full-time content creators. I don't know if you saw that.
Well, I'm actually, so TikTok is the one that I stay off of. I used to be on it, but but I burn enough of my hours every day on the internet, and so I had to get something out of there. So tell me what's happening on TikTok.
So there's a conversation that's going around that talks about how a lot of girls, or just people in general, they're dropping out of college to pursue content creation full time. And so there's so many people that's inputting into this conversation. They're like, do not drop out of college to be a content creator. Not right now, because right now the market, it's saturated. The rates are not the same. There's too many of us here. And it's not saying that you shouldn't be a creator, but don't drop something as amazing as college, where you might have a degree and all these other, your backup plan.
Hedge your bets.
Yes. Like maybe a couple of years ago, a lot of us have done that. We've quit our jobs and, but now with the market being so saturated, the money is not the same anymore. There's a lot of blurred lines, red tape. It's just a different time. And I wouldn't advise anyone against that. But yes, that's what's the conversation that's happening at TikTok at the moment on TikTok.
How do you feel about TikTok as a platform right now? You were just saying that, LinkedIn, you think you're still pretty bullish on, but you think that the wave is kind of cresting a little bit. What do you think about TikTok? What are your feelings there right now?
The love I had for TikTok is very different than the love I had now. When I used to scroll on TikTok, it felt very pure. It felt very, before TikTok Shop, before the ads, when everyone just went on there to really provide something. If it was entertainment, if it was education, if it was inspiration, I used to love TikTok for that. I would scroll and be like, oh my God, I needed to hear that today. Now I scroll on TikTok to watch Love After Lockup, Judge Judy, a couple recipes here and there. It's saturated with TikTok Shop.
That you save and then never cook? Because I know that's how I do it.
100%. Some of them I do go back. Like I made a red cabbage salad yesterday from TikTok. I was very happy about it. But it's just not the same platform. I think after the TikTok ban, a lot of brands are very hesitant about doing brand partnerships. I've had a couple brand partnerships that have been like, hey, let's pivot off of TikTok and maybe do like an Instagram and a YouTube short. So it's just not the same platform. I know there's a lot of people that make a lot of money off TikTok Shop. So I 100%, don't want to scare anyone away from that. But I don't feel like it's the same platform that it was than what it used to be. It's in the influencer era where it's like, let me sell you something. It's affiliate, buy. But I don't get that emotional reaction from TikTok like I used to.
Yeah, that's one thing I wonder too, because I'm also a millennial around your age, I think, and like the Gen Z kids maybe who are like 21, 22, and who have grown up with TikTok since they were like a teen. In the way, I mean, I got on Facebook in like 8th grade, and that was my first. And then I was on Instagram like, I don't know, maybe 6 years later.
Yeah.
It took a while. And MySpace before that. But anyways, I'm getting away from myself here. But I wonder though if like for a kid who's like 21 or something,
Yeah.
by the way, if any of you are listening, maybe sound off in the YouTube comments. But like how this feels more normal to them or doesn't. And maybe I could find that out if I did a little social listening.
Yeah.
But that I mean, I really wonder that if like the kind of TikTok shop or like the live feeds where I don't even have the right terminology, where you're like giving them coins or whatever.
Live
like,
streams. Yeah.
yeah. Like if that just is more normal and the more social web that we were used to when we were younger, that is harder to find at times. Like if that just is something that isn't native to them and they are more like that transactional social media, that's not really social, but more just like market-based media is what they're more used to.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. That's why they're like the lonely generation because everything for them is like online. For us, I was reading this article not too long ago, but it talked about like the abstinence of like no third spaces. Like for us, we used to go to like the movie theater and the mall. I used to hang out with my friends, I used to work at Steak and Shake. Like that's where we used to hang out like physically with friends, football games. Like Gen Z, they don't have that. They're online all the time, 24/7. They don't really meet real people. And so they yearn for that, but they don't know how to find friends. That's why you have like Bumble BFF. Like you're using an app to literally find a friend. Like we didn't do that back in our day. Back in our day, we went to the skating ring. We hung out with people from our high school. Like it's just a different time. And for them, yes, they grew up in the era of TikTok. So for them, I want to grow up and be a content creator or like, I'm going to create content so I can be a content creator. For us, we didn't have that. Like I was on MySpace, Bebo, Facebook, like that's what I was on, but it was never an aspiration, to be that.
Well, yeah, because there wasn't even, I mean, I think the word creator was first used by YouTube in like 2011, 2010.
100%.
And then it didn't really become like a viable job until maybe, I don't know, 5 years later. But it's funny. One side note on your third spaces comment is like, I was thinking about this idea a lot actually last week. I was talking to some people about it, that the third space isn't dead, but it's kind of like you're saying, it's just that people grow up on an app like that. Like you learn that social ability to go out and just like talk to a person. Like I was right before we hopped on this recording, I went to a coffee shop in my neighborhood and got a little cortado. Did not run into anybody I know this time, but I often do. But I mean, because I live in New York and it's a denser neighborhood, whatever, I'll see friends there. But it's like the third space is alive and well. It's just that maybe people are afraid of it or afraid of other people. I don't know.
Yeah, it's different. It's interesting. I've gone to a lot of creator events and I am very shy to talk to people. I'm kind of like clammed up in a corner and I'm like, man, back in the day, I used to be like, hey, what's going on? What's your name? My name's Jazmin. Never. You would not. Now I'm like, so like, what do I say? I'm awkward. And I'm like, this is just so different. And it's because I've probably been inside a lot. I'm scrolling online.
Dude,
or you have this, this perception of people, parasocial relationships. Like it just goes. So yeah.
That actually is the thing too. If you're at an event where there's somebody who who they are and you know a little too much about them, then it is kind of weird to go up and like, because you know too much already.
Yeah. It's like, but people develop these false relationships. It's like there's some creators that I watch, I love them, but sometimes I'm like, I'm talking to my boyfriend, like, I saw such and such. And I'm like, wait, this is weird. Like, I can talk about her. Like, this is weird. And people have come up to me and they're like, hey, oh my God, it's so great that you're in New York. And I'm like, oh, okay. People follow you, Jazmin. So, it's just the name of the game right now. But it's just weird because that's not how it used to be. Okay,
well, so let's talk about you as creator. We talked a little bit about this earlier in the TikTok versus the Instagram versus the LinkedIn. I was picking up that maybe earlier on it was just like a creative outlet for you and like a emotional outlet and like a way to kind of like say how you felt and be seen. And then now it looks to me like it's almost more of like a business card for you, your social presence generally, correct?
Yeah. So I consider myself a brand now. Like I tell creators all the time, like you are a brand, like you're a brand, you can make money off of you. So I started monetizing off of social like 2022, but I didn't really consider it as another income stream until like 2020.
What was the first dollar or whatever, how you first monetized?
I think it was like $500. Like it wasn't a lot. Like, and I thought that was a lot. And this is like when like I was like, how are people finding brand deals? I wasn't pitching. It was like
Mm.
inbound. Like it was still like a very awkward conversation around like, okay, how do I make money off of content? So yeah, 2022 was probably when I
Was it
started really
like
like,
a product placement type of thing?
yeah, it was, what was it? It was like a skincare serum kind of
Yeah.
ordeal. It was like something, I can't even remember the brand, but I remember it was like $500. I still have like my little Notion template where I wrote every single one that I got. I was like, okay, gifted, zero. So when I look back at it from time to time, I'm like, man, in 2022, I didn't make any money. And I'm like, oh, last year I did something. So yeah, it was like a skincare serum, but it was like
Mm.
$500. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you kind of you learn like, well, what is the worth of my brand? What is like, how
Yeah.
can I position this? How can I argue this? Then it's kind of
Yeah.
something too that like that negotiation ability, especially if you aren't
Oh
coming from like a
my
business
God.
background, like you might have no idea. You might be asking for way too much and then you won't get anything, or you might like
Yes.
be asking for way too little and then you're kind of like, helping them exploit you. It's
Yes.
really hard.
The negotiation, it still makes me nervous to this
Mhm.
day. But now I will throw out a big number. Now I'll talk to my boyfriend. I'm like, should I say this? Is this too much? I'm like, what happens if they ghost me? And they're like, don't do it. You never know what they're gonna say. But now when you understand like usage rights and paid media and perpetuity, all these things that I
Mhm.
didn't know in the beginning that I was literally giving away for free. When a brand tells you like, hey, we'll only pay you, $1,000, and you're like, wait, you want 60-day usage? Like, there's exclusivity. When you start to learn those things, the negotiation is a little bit easier, but you can't be afraid, to say a high number because you just never know. And then sometimes when you do throw out a high number, they're like, okay, yes, you're kind of like, dang, I should have gone higher than that. So
Yeah.
it's a weird thing, when it comes to negotiation.
Well, this is something I wonder about too, like the maturation of the creator economy and like of these
Hmm.
processes where now like the percentage, actually I don't know if I can say the percentage of people, but the number of people who know how to negotiate these things on
Yeah.
both the brand side and the creator side has risen. I was going to say that the percentage has risen, but I'm not sure that's true because I think there's just so many more creators, so the percentage could have
Yeah.
gone up or down, but
Yeah.
on a purely numerical level, more of them know. But like, I wonder how these things get codified. And I know there's like the create some kind of, I forget the exact name of it, but this creators guild was recently formed. And like these things there's attempts to define them, but it's so
Hmm.
hard because there's always going to be somebody who is less informed and like less like
Yeah.
protective of their labor in that way, and is willing to sell like the placement or whatever for a much cheaper number. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
tough.
A lot of creators now are represented by agencies. I used to be
Mhm.
represented by a couple agencies, all complete fails. But a lot of, creators are represented by agencies. And so the agencies are kind of the ones doing the negotiation for them. But what I've kind of ran into, especially from like being on the brand side, is a lot of brands don't really like to deal with specific agents or agencies because they go way too high. They're being like unrealistic with numbers. And
Mhm.
a lot of them are doing that so they can get that 15 to 20%,
Yeah.
on the back end. So, it's a weird space to be in with negotiation because it's kind of like you have to ultimately put your trust into an agency to think that, okay, they're going to negotiate well for me. But there's also this like, I don't know, like this bad taste in brands' mouth because they just know, oh, if you're represented, I already know this is going to be a field day. It's going to be,
There's
they're
already
going to send me,
the agent tax. Yeah.
it's the agent tax. They're going to send 3 or 4 other creators that are on their roster over.
That
Can we
aren't a good
add this?
fit.
They aren't a good fit. It just ends up being a whole whirlwind of things.
Okay, so I should say you've been a great podcast guest here. You've
Thank
really brought the
you.
energy. Sometimes as somebody who hosts, I know the pressure is always on me to, of course, do my research, to like be well rested, well caffeinated, etc. Like bring some level of base energy. It's been very easy with you because you
Thank
have a
you.
high level of energy and you're very good at articulating your ideas. Which I bring this all
Thank
up to
you.
say too, that you had a podcast called Dear Woman, I
Oh,
Got Y'all, that
oh
ran for
yes.
10 episodes over 3 months in 2023. How did that come about, and then why did you stop?
Oh. Oh, I totally forgot about that. So that podcast came about. I was still in the relationship that I'm in now, but I was
Yes.
in this weird area where I wanted to do a podcast and I really wanted to find a way to give like my inspirational, motivational like content that I was doing before. And so I worked
The
with like
stuff
the
that was really
Tomorrow
hitting on
Network.
TikTok.
Yes. And so I was like, let's put this into a podcast. So I worked with the Tomorrow Network on it, and I did these 10 episodes. The reason why I didn't continue is what I learned through that process is I struggled to put together content around those topics because I didn't resonate with those topics anymore. Like I would be filming and I'm like, let's do this again. It didn't feel natural. And I was like, there's no way I could do a season 2 on this unless maybe let's talk about corporate or, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like maybe I can do a spinoff where it's more like entrepreneurship, but I really struggled. I don't know if you can even tell on the episodes, but I really struggled with the content. And I was like happy when I had the episodes with guests because I was like, okay, I get a break. But like when I was doing that by myself, I really struggled because I was like, this doesn't feel natural to me. It doesn't come off of my tongue like it used to be because I'm not in the moment. I'm not feeling those things anymore because I'm not that person anymore, you know? So yeah, that's why I didn't continue. But ultimately I did it because I wanted a space for women to be able to just listen and to have that. And so there's a lot of things that I would have done differently, but it was just good to test it out and to say that I did it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've never done an episode of this solo. But I couldn't.
It's hard.
I can't carry a whole room like that by myself.
Absolutely not. And then you have somebody watching you and film you. And I'm trying to like cry. I'm like, this is not working.
No, I'm not. I can't manipulate myself that much.
No.
Okay. Last question. So I watched 1 or 2 of your videos on Instagram. Where you were talking about how you had like a direction you wanted to go in with all your work, but not a specific destination in mind, which I feel you about the journey, not the destination. But I wanted to ask if at the moment you are more focused on having success with Que Lo Que, with your more like freelance professional for hire aspect, or even as a creator. What are you most interested and invested in right now?
I think for me, what success looks like is just, I just want to be a thought leader in this space. Like I see myself 5 years from now, I'm like, I want to be doing TED Talks. Like I made a video about this the other day. I said, I enjoy working a 9 to 5 and also freelancing on the side because I like the duality. Like I know TikTok kind of glamorizes the idea of being your own entrepreneur and they're like, ooh, 9 to 5, no, quit your job. But I've always worked a 9 to 5, you know, I've always been a freelancer or contractor. And so for me, success is just, I want to be a thought leader in the space. I want people to come to me and say, hey, Jazz, we want you to come in here and consult for us for 6 months around X, Y, and Z. Or, hey, can you come do a TED Talk about this? Can you write a book? Like, I really just want to be a thought leader. And that's what success, you know, for me looks like. So if it's me working a 9 to 5, being a VP of social intelligence or social strategy, then cool. If it's me being able to sign a 7-figure client to Que Lo Que, even greater. If it's me being able to be a creator, and go to Cannes, hello, then that's great too. So that's what success looks like for me. I don't try to fit it in a box. I think it has different lanes, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Anybody who's still listening, send her those press credentials, hire her. Jazmine, thank you for coming on. This was really fun.
Thank you for having me. This was amazing. I had fun. I was nervous, but I was like, whoa, this is fun. You're natural. Like you're so good at this.
No, shut up.
Yeah. No, you're good.
You made it easy. Okay, you made it easy.
Thank you.
Last thing. Where should people go to find your work or connect with you?
Oh, great. Okay, you can find me on LinkedIn. This is where I'm at usually majority of the time, and I'm usually talking to people in the comment section. So I'm Jazmine Griffin on LinkedIn. If you want to learn about Que Lo Que, you can go to queloque.co, which is QUELOQUE.co. And then I am the Socialista on Instagram and TikTok if you want to like lifestyle stuff as well. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Hit her up, and listener, I will see you next week.